Airline refuses to upgrade black woman to first class. She buys the whole plane instead. Power is never just handed over. Sometimes it has to be claimed, and sometimes it has to be bought outright. In a world brimming with entitlement and hidden prejudices, an act of discrimination can unravel lives in the most unexpected ways. Today, we explore the extraordinary story of one woman who was not only denied her rightful place, but also confronted injustice head-on by purchasing the very airplane she was barred from enjoying. Fasten your seatbelts as we journey through drama, betrayal, and a stunning triumph that shakes a global airline to its core, proving once and for all that destinies can change in a single, explosive moment. Marcia Duval had never felt more certain of her achievements than she did when she arrived at John F. Kennedy International Airport in New York City early one Tuesday morning. Walking through the glass doors of Terminal 8, she wore a crisp, white blazer, matching slacks, and a pair of elegant heels. Every inch of her ensemble spoke of poise and determination. With a resume that boasted a prominent leadership role at a major finance firm on Wall Street, she had learned to command the attention of any room she entered, especially when dealing with high-stakes negotiations. At 37, Marcia carried herself with a confidence born of countless battles in the boardroom. She was used to forging her own path in a competitive world, a skill she had honed since childhood. Growing up in a modest neighborhood, she'd never allowed circumstance to hold her back. Hard work, discipline, and a keen understanding of human nature had guided her from her first babysitting gig to her senior role in a high-profile firm. She had money, respect, and connections. Yet, for all her success, she was keenly aware that the deck could still be stacked against her simply because of the color of her skin. The morning's journey began harmlessly enough. She stepped out of the sleek black car her firm had provided and headed toward the airline counters. She was on her way to Los Angeles for an important presentation that could secure one of the most lucrative deals in the firm's history. The flight was with American Airlines, a brand she'd flown with countless times without incident. At least, not incidents that escalated into the life-changing scale of what was to come. Her ticket was in business class, a reward for her countless hours of dedication and the stringent travel policy of her firm. She normally had no qualms with business seating. It was comfortable and allowed her to catch up on reading and rest. However, this trip felt different. She was on the brink of finalizing a deal that would make her one of the youngest managing directors in the firm's history. She wanted to celebrate the moment. On a whim, she decided, why not treat herself to first class? She approached the upgrade counter, documents in hand. She expected the usual routine of smiling staff, friendly banter, and a polite mention of any additional fees. Instead, she was greeted by a steely-faced agent named Brenda. The short exchange that ensued was so curt and cold that Marcia felt a rush of indignation warm her cheeks. "Good morning," Marcia offered with a polite smile. "I'd like to inquire about upgrading to first class for flight AA 3637 to Los Angeles." Brenda didn't look up from her computer screen. She was chewing gum in a loud, distracting manner. "Your name?" "Marcia Duval." Brenda typed something into the terminal, the rhythmic clacking of keys filling the uncomfortable silence. For a moment, Marcia thought everything would proceed as usual. But then the typing stopped. Brenda shot a glance at Marcia that was laden with something more than mere disinterest. Brenda muttered. "Seems we're booked up for first class." Marcia knew enough about airline capacity. She'd checked the seats online just an hour before arriving at the airport. There were still 3 seats left in first class. She had the credit card ready. The cost wasn't an issue, so she tried again. "Are you certain? There should be seats available." "I looked at the seating chart this morning." Brenda's lips thinned into a disapproving line. "Well, we don't have any seats to offer you. Even if we did, it's complicated, and you're better off just sticking to business, honey." It wasn't just the words, it was the condescending tone and the pointed stare. Honey. That word, dripping with a dismissiveness Marcia recognized all too well, sent alarm bells ringing in her mind. Instinct told her to push forward. She leaned on the counter, calm but firm. I'm willing to pay for the upgrade right now. I can see from your website that there are seats available. Brenda's gum chewing intensified, and she shrugged. Sometimes the website is out of date. There's nothing I can do. Marcia felt the heat rise in her. She wasn't one to cause a scene, but she believed in standing her ground. Could I speak with the supervisor? I have an important flight, and I'd prefer to travel first class. Brenda's eyes flickered with impatience. I am the supervisor, she said, half laughing as she gestured at a name tag that read, Indeed, supervisor. Then she repeated, We're sold out. Next in line. Marcia's jaw tightened. A line had formed behind her, with impatient travelers glancing at their phones and tapping their toes. She felt a wave of conflicting emotions, the old, familiar frustration of being dismissed based on an assumption. The feeling that if she was a different color, or perhaps a man, the conversation might have gone differently. She had experienced subtle, and sometimes not so subtle, forms of discrimination before, but never so blatantly in a professional setting. Still, she knew this was not the place for a prolonged confrontation. Thank you, she said tersely. Swallowing her anger, she stepped aside to gather her composure. She wasn't naive enough to assume that every roadblock was due to race, but the pointed glare, the dismissive language, and the refusal, despite clear availability of seats, made the situation smell of prejudice. She made her way through security, her heart pounding and her mind racing. On board the plane, she tried to settle into her seat, but the sting lingered. She wanted to let it go, to focus on her upcoming presentation. But as she scanned the aisles, she caught sight of 3 men, one in a tailored suit, 2 in polo shirts, chatting easily as they made their way to first class, seat tickets in hand. It was infuriating. She had just been told the seats were full. Yet here were 3 more passengers walking to the front, her jaw clenched with silent fury. She wanted to speak up, but she had business to attend to in Los Angeles. Grudges and fights could wait, or so she thought. Little did she know, this small moment would be the spark that ignited a massive blaze, a single, dismissive no that set off a chain of events, forcing an entire airline to face its darkest biases. Before this journey ended, heads would roll, fortunes would shift, and Marcia's life would never be the same again. Marcia's mind whirled for the duration of the 6-hour flight. Her seat in business class was comfortable enough, but her indignation refused to soften. She replayed the incident at the upgrade desk over and over, trying to analyze every subtle microaggression, every hint of hostility. She considered letting it go after all. She had bigger fish to fry. But one memory from childhood kept surfacing, being in a department store, asked by a suspicious clerk if she could really afford an item she wanted to buy. That memory had hurt more than she'd admitted at the time, and this was no different. When they landed at LAX, Marcia was still boiling inside. She wasn't one to let an injustice slide, especially one so blatant. Pulling out her phone, she wrote a succinct but fiery email to American Airlines customer service, explaining her experience at JFK. She hit send before she could second-guess herself. She also posted a short message on a professional networking site, not naming the airline but hinting strongly that a major carrier might need a better approach to customer relations. That same evening, she delivered her presentation at a high-rise in downtown Los Angeles. The meeting was with a billionaire venture capitalist, a real heavyweight who could propel Marcia to a new echelon in her career. Despite being exhausted from the flight and the emotional stress, she commanded the room. Her voice was clear, her slides impeccable, and her logic sharp. The applause at the end was thunderous, and the handshake from the lead investor was warm. She had sealed a deal that would elevate her firm's standing and her own. Yet success had a bittersweet flavor that night. She returned to her luxurious hotel suite, sprawled across the plush king-size bed, and let out a deep sigh. Why couldn't she simply enjoy her achievements without the nagging feeling that she had to fight an uphill battle every single time? She was lost in thought when her phone buzzed. It was an email reply from American Airlines. She sat up straight, surprised to receive a response so quickly. Her eyes skimmed over the words, "We regret to hear about your recent experience. Our team will conduct a thorough investigation. We appreciate your loyalty to American Airlines and will contact you with any updates regarding your claim." Marcia felt a small surge of triumph. At least she had been heard. Whether the airline took it seriously or brushed it aside remained to be seen, but the initial acknowledgement was a start. However, she had no clue that this minor exchange would spiral into something far beyond a formal apology letter. Over the next 2 days, her schedule in Los Angeles was packed with client meetings, celebratory dinners, and a brief televised interview about her rising star in the finance world. She was too preoccupied to dwell on the airline matter, but every once in a while, the memory of that dismissive no from the gate agent surfaced, renewing her anger. On the 3rd day, she wrapped up her last meeting earlier than expected and decided to treat herself to a solo dinner at a chic Beverly Hills restaurant. As she savored her meal, she scrolled through social media. Among congratulatory messages on her recent deal, she saw dozens of comments on her subtle post about the airline. To her astonishment, her private anecdote had gone viral. People were sharing stories of their own experiences, praising her for speaking up. Some pointed out the glaring pattern of discrimination they too had encountered. Then came a direct message from a well-known journalist at a major online publication requesting an interview. Marcia hesitated. She wasn't sure she wanted that level of attention, yet part of her recognized this as an opportunity to highlight an issue that countless travelers faced. Sometimes real change required speaking out. So she agreed to a short phone call the next morning. 15 minutes turned into an hour. The journalist, Alex Grant, seemed genuinely interested in the broader issue of racial discrimination in customer service. He assured her he had data and other interviews to corroborate a feature he was working on. By the end, Marcia felt a mixture of relief and anxiety. She had never expected to be in the spotlight for something other than her finance career. That same night, her phone blew up again, this time with calls from airline representatives anxious to discuss possible resolutions. She took a moment to breathe, rubbed her temples, and decided to answer. A polite voice, introducing himself as Brian from American Airlines Corporate Customer Relations, laid out a carefully worded apology, along with an offer of 50,000 frequent flyer miles and a $500 travel voucher. It was a standard corporate band-aid, likely intended to smooth over any brewing PR issues. Marcia's response was measured. "I appreciate the gesture, Brian, but this isn't about miles or a voucher. It's about ensuring that no one else experiences the kind of dismissive treatment I got. I'd like a proper investigation, and I'd like to hear from your management on what will be done to address this pattern." Brian was silent for a moment before replying, "We understand your concern. We'll be in touch soon." As she ended the call, she felt a shift in her gut. This was bigger than her, bigger than a single-seat upgrade. The next day, the journalist's feature went live. Prominent Wall Street executive details discrimination at major airline. It garnered national attention within hours. Suddenly, Marcia found herself at the center of a brewing storm. The article was trending across platforms, and her email inbox exploded with messages of support from strangers, as well as inquiries from local activists, lawyers, and more reporters. Despite the chaos, she refused to back down. This was a fight for something greater, a fight for dignity and fairness. And sometimes, as she was about to learn, the universe has a strange way of magnifying the voices of those who won't be silenced. Meanwhile, back in Dallas, where American Airlines had its corporate headquarters, the atmosphere was tense. The company's CEO, Patrick Wallace, had been in back-to-back meetings all day, trying to contain the fallout. He stood in front of a large floor-to-ceiling window in the executive suite, staring out at the city skyline, phone pressed against his ear. "Yes, I understand," he said, nodding grimly. "We're handling it. She's gotten an apology and an offer. I'll do a video statement if necessary." He hung up and turned to face the handful of board members who had just flown in for an emergency meeting. "We're dealing with a PR nightmare," he said. "The story is going viral, and the last thing we need right now is more bad publicity. We're trying to finalize a merger with a foreign carrier, and if we're painted as insensitive or worse yet, discriminatory, it could cost us everything." The boardroom was filled with murmurs of agreement. On the table in front of them lay multiple files, each containing summary data about the incident, Marcia's background, her track record with the airline, and notes about the staff involved. Brenda, the gate agent supervisor, had been placed on immediate administrative leave, but Patrick knew that public outcry wouldn't be satisfied with one person's suspension. The issue was systemic, and people were clamoring for tangible reforms. "At this point," said one board member, an older woman with silver-streaked hair, "we should consider a direct conversation with Miss Duval. A sincere apology from top management, a real plan to address implicit bias training, and possibly some philanthropic initiative in her name. We need to show we're serious." Patrick nodded. "Agreed. We have to move carefully, though. The second we admit wrongdoing, we open ourselves up to lawsuits, and from what I hear, Miss Duval is well connected. If she chooses to take legal action, it won't be easy for us." He stepped back, leaning on the edge of the mahogany table, arms folded. His mind raced through various crisis management strategies. On one hand, downplaying the issue could be catastrophic. On the other, launching an immediate reform movement might look like an admission of guilt. High-stakes corporate drama was something he was used to, but this felt different. It touched on social issues that were volatile and deeply personal to many. After a lengthy discussion, they decided on a two-pronged approach: swiftly reach out to Marcia for a private discussion and concurrently prepare a public statement emphasizing their commitment to equality. They'd also expedite a plan for additional diversity training. Patrick was designated as the spokesperson. After all, as CEO, his word carried the most weight. The crisis forced them all to confront something uncomfortable. The airlines, like many large institutions, were not free of the biases that plagued society. Behind closed doors, board members revealed private stories. Some about relatives who had faced similar discrimination, others about close calls that never made it to the media. They realized this incident was not an isolated one. It was just the first to gain traction in a time of hyper-connected social media activism. By the end of the meeting, the corporate machine was in full swing. Press releases being drafted, social media teams on high alert, legal teams bracing for impact, and diversity experts tapped to quickly produce some form of a reconciliation plan. Yet, none of them could have anticipated that their well-laid PR strategies would soon be overshadowed by a series of events that not even the shrewdest board member could predict. While the public face of American Airlines scrambled to project control, internal tensions were at an all-time high. Some employees were outraged by what they saw as a betrayal of the company's professed values. Others feared for their jobs, uncertain if layoffs or major restructures might be on the horizon to appease an angry public. Meanwhile, an unlikely figure emerged from the chaos, a mid-level financial analyst in the corporate offices named Kevin Blake, a meticulous number cruncher. Kevin had been tasked with doing an internal cost analysis of the PR crisis. His job was to forecast potential lawsuits, estimate the loss of ticket revenue from angry customers, and weigh that against any hush money or settlement that might be needed to keep Miss Duval from escalating the situation. But as Kevin pored over internal emails and spreadsheets, he stumbled upon something odd, a large sum of money allocated under a vague budget line, labeled Management Discretionary Funds. The amounts were significant millions of dollars transferred to an account that didn't match any of the usual vendor or contract names. Curious and a bit unsettled, Kevin dug deeper. Each time he clicked through the records, he encountered tighter security protocols. He soon discovered that this discretionary fund had been used in multiple out-of-court settlements for various incidents, some of which bore a striking resemblance to Marcia's complaint. There were at least a dozen similar claims from other African-American travelers, some receiving hush money in exchange for non-disclosure agreements. These never made it to the news. Kevin's blood ran cold. He realized that the pattern of discrimination was not an outlier, it was a recurring problem that had been systematically covered up. Disturbed, Kevin debated what to do with this information. He was a corporate man, dedicated to his career. Blowing the whistle could destroy his life. But as days passed and social media outrage over Marcia's case intensified, Kevin felt guilt gnaw at him. He decided to reach out to Marcia privately using an encrypted email service. He summarized his findings, emphasizing that the airline had a track record of discreetly dealing with discrimination complaints. He attached a few screenshots of the suspicious financial ledgers, carefully redacting his own name. He ended the email with a note, "You have more power than you realize. Be cautious." The sums involved suggest they will go to any length to keep this quiet, but if enough people speak up, they can't cover it all. When Marcia saw the email, her heart pounded. She was on her final day in Los Angeles, preparing to fly back to New York. She didn't know who this anonymous tipster was, but the documents looked credible enough to raise real concern. Suddenly, her personal grievance took on a deeper significance. This wasn't just about her seat upgrade. There was a pattern, and the airline was paying handsomely to keep it buried. She saved the documents on a secure drive and sat in her hotel room, staring at her reflection in the mirror. She was on the brink of the biggest career move of her life. Did she really want to step into an arena that might involve lengthy legal battles, corporate espionage, and possible retaliation? She had to decide whether she was willing to risk everything for the principle of exposing a corrupt system. After a long moment, she tapped a number on her phone. "Alex," she said when the journalist answered, "I need to see you again. I've discovered something bigger than either of us imagined." 2 weeks after Marcia's fateful flight, she found herself in New York City, wearing a charcoal grey power suit, ready for battle. A press conference had been hastily organized by American Airlines top brass, apparently to clear the air. CEO Patrick Wallace was rumored to be in attendance, along with some board members and PR executives. The venue was a sleek conference room at a swanky Manhattan hotel. Dozens of reporters and cameras were set up, jostling for position. Marcia received a formal invitation a day prior, which she found suspicious. It was unusual for a corporation to invite the aggrieved party to a press conference unless they wanted to publicly appease or corner her. She walked in, head held high, accompanied by her attorney, a sharp civil rights litigator named Tanya Wu, and a small entourage of supporters, including some well-known activists. At the front of the room, an American Airlines banner was displayed beside a podium. Patrick Wallace took the stage, his demeanor calm yet tense. He started with a carefully rehearsed statement. "Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. We at American Airlines take all customer complaints seriously. especially those involving allegations of discrimination. We want to assure the public that we are addressing these issues head-on. We are implementing new policies and training programs to ensure that each passenger feels valued and respected. Marcia watched from the sidelines, her expression stoic. She had learned from the leaked documents that the airline's leadership had repeatedly promised such training in the past, only to shelve or water down the programs in the name of cost-cutting. She felt a surge of anger rise within her. Then Wallace gestured toward her. "We are pleased to have Miss Marcia Duval here with us. We appreciate her willingness to share her experience and to help us learn and grow from it. Miss Duval, if you'd like to come forward, we would welcome your perspective." It was a bold move. Perhaps they expected her to graciously accept a public apology, or maybe they believed a gentle nudge on stage would mollify the masses. But Marcia had prepared for this moment. She stood up, Tanya at her side, and walked to the podium. Cameras flashed wildly. She took a breath, scanning the sea of faces in front of her. "I appreciate the invitation," she began, voice controlled. "I also appreciate that American Airlines is taking steps to address what happened to me at JFK. But this issue runs deeper than my personal complaint." She reached into her briefcase, pulled out a single sheet of paper, and held it aloft. "I have documents suggesting that this airline has systematically covered up similar incidents, paying settlements under the table. The question is not whether one employee was rude or one passenger was denied a seat upgrade. The question is, why is this happening repeatedly? Why is there a hidden ledger for hush money payments?" A murmur spread through the crowd. Wallace's face went pale. He glanced nervously at the board members. Tanya stepped forward to place a thick stack of papers on the podium, copies of redacted financial records, internal emails, and prior complaint references. The tension in the room escalated to a fever pitch. Marcia continued, "I want solutions, not just for me, but for every traveler who's been made to feel less than. We all deserve respect, regardless of skin color or social status, and it's time American Airlines showed it, not just in words, but in verifiable action. Many of you are from the press. Please examine these documents. If they prove to be as they appear, then it's clear the issue is systemic." Wallace hurried back to the microphone, stumbling through a prepared statement. He promised a full internal audit and immediate public disclosure of the findings. But the press conference had already taken a life of its own. Reporters bombarded him with questions. Some demanded to see the alleged hush money records. Others asked why, if American Airlines was truly committed to fairness, these issues had repeated themselves for years. The chaotic scene concluded with security stepping in to manage the crowd. Marcia left with her head held high, flanked by supporters. She had turned the tables on a billion-dollar corporation in a public forum, shining a light on a hidden reality. What no one yet knew was that this confrontation had lit a fuse under the airline's leadership, leading them to consider drastic measures. And unbeknownst to Marcia, an unexpected ally was about to emerge, offering her a path she'd never dreamed possible, a path that would soon lead to the staggering twist of her actually owning an airplane. In the days following the explosive press conference, American Airlines found itself under an intense microscope. The hashtag American Airlines Accountability trended. Activists, organized boycotts, and consumer rights groups called for government investigations. Stocks started to wobble as investors questioned how the scandal might impact the airline's profitability and pending merger deals. Marcia tried to maintain a semblance of normalcy, continuing her work at the finance firm. She was riding the high of having secured an impressive deal, but her involvement in the controversy made her a household name. Clients sought her out for her tenacity, while critics lambasted her for making a fuss over what some deemed an isolated incident. But her position was unshakable. If you see an injustice, you either stand against it or become complicit. Then came a startling development. While reviewing her messages one evening, she noticed an email from a man named Giovanni Rossi, a private aviation magnate based in Europe. Rossi was known in business circles for buying and selling high-end jets and even entire aviation fleets. The email read, "Dear Miss Duval, my name is Giovanni Rossi. I have been following your story with great interest and admiration. I believe we share a common vision for an aviation industry where customer experience is of the utmost importance, without bias or prejudice. I would be delighted to discuss a unique business proposition with you, one that might allow you to take a more direct role in shaping airline culture. Please let me know a convenient time for us to speak. Warm regards." Gia Rossi. Marcia stared at the email in disbelief. She had heard of Rossi's empire. He was a legend in luxury aviation circles, rumored to have built a fortune acquiring older jets and refurbishing them into lavish airborne palaces. But why would he contact her? Cautiously, she forwarded the email to Tanya, her lawyer, asking her to vet Rossi's credentials. Tanya confirmed that Rossi was indeed legitimate, with a reputation for unorthodox deals and philanthropic ventures that sought to uplift marginalized communities. Intrigued, Marcia scheduled a video call. 2 days later, she found herself face to face with an impeccably dressed Italian man in his 50s, hair silvered at the temples. His accent was thick, but his English was fluid and charming. "Miss Duval, thank you for taking the time. I'll be brief. In my decades in aviation, I've seen it all: grandeur, corruption, brilliance, and discrimination. I've also seen how we can change the world if we invest in the right people." Marcia listened, curiosity piqued. Rossi went on to explain his vision of an airline with integrity, an airline that treats passengers as guests, not cattle. His plan involved purchasing certain underused planes from large carriers, rebranding them, and operating boutique flights on heavily trafficked routes. He had been scouting an older Boeing 737 that American Airlines was looking to sell. It needed upgrades, a new design, and a fresh concept. In short, a complete overhaul. Then came the curveball. "I want you to be a partner in this. You have a sharp mind for finance, a respected public platform, and a burning passion to see change in commercial aviation. Help me buy this plane, transform it, and launch a direct competitor that shames bigger airlines into improving." Marcia almost laughed at the audacity. "You want me to buy a plane? My net worth isn't in the same galaxy as yours, Mr. Rossi, even if I'm doing well." Rossi smiled. "It doesn't need to be. Consider it a leveraged buy. I'll put up the bulk of the capital. You invest what you can comfortably afford. We'll share ownership with you as the face of the new brand. We call it maybe something that stands for equity, fairness. You'll have an equal voice in how we run it. We'll be small, but we'll make a statement." Her mind reeled. She was used to risk, used to bold moves in the finance world, but this was on another level. "This is huge. I don't want to jump into anything blindly." "Certainly," Rossi replied. "Take your time. Do your due diligence. But something tells me you're ready to be part of the solution, not just the expos." News of Rossi's offer weighed on Marcia's mind for days. She consulted with Tanya, close friends, and even her mother, who reminded her that she'd always been a fierce champion of turning obstacles into opportunities. If she entered the aviation industry herself, perhaps she could demonstrate firsthand how passengers of all backgrounds should be treated, establishing a shining alternative model. On the other hand, it was a massive leap into unknown territory, yet the more she wrestled with it, the more sense it made. Corporate life on Wall Street had its perks. She was poised to become a managing director, enjoying a seven-figure salary plus bonuses. But even in finance, she'd battled prejudice and tokenism. The thought of forging a new path, leveraging her newly amplified public profile to institute real change, was thrilling. It resonated with her childhood dream of not just breaking barriers but obliterating them. Late one evening, she placed a call to Rossi. "I'm in," she said simply. "But I want a seat at the table for every major decision, from hiring practices to in-flight amenities." Rossi laughed, delighted. Deal. In the following weeks, negotiations with American Airlines were intense. The irony was palpable. The same airline that had discriminated against her was now, unknowingly, about to sell her in partnership with Rossi one of its older planes. Rossi orchestrated everything under his corporate umbrella to avoid tipping them off that Marcia was involved. Once the deal was nearly complete, they revealed her co-ownership. By then, it was too late for American Airlines to back out without incurring major penalties. The contract's clauses were ironclad. The press had a field day when the news broke. Woman denied seat, upgrade buys plane from same airline. Journalists ate it up, proclaiming it a real-life fairy tale of revenge. The public was jubilant on social media. Countless memes circulated. One showed a cartoon version of Marcia in a pilot's uniform, brandishing an airplane like a trophy. She tried to maintain a gracious stance, reiterating that this move wasn't about revenge, but about inspiring change. Behind the scenes, however, the tension was thick. American Airlines leadership saw the purchase as a stinging embarrassment. Patrick Wallace privately fumed that if he had known Marcia was involved, he would have killed the deal. Now he had no choice but to watch as a new brand, tentatively named Skyrise, prepared to launch with a refurbished Boeing 737. The PR fiasco for American Airlines deepened. It seemed every mainstream news outlet wanted to highlight how Marcia had turned the tables. But the drama was far from over. Unbeknownst to Marcia, the very people who had orchestrated hush-money payouts were not about to sit back and let their secrets be further exposed. In the shadows, a plan was taking shape, a plan to sabotage Skyrise before it could even take flight. On a balmy afternoon in Miami, the newly purchased Boeing 737 sat in a hangar, awaiting its transformation. A team of engineers, designers, and planners assembled by Rossi buzzed around the aircraft, planning everything from seat design to branding. Marcia was there, wearing a safety vest, feeling an electric thrill as she ran her hand along the fuselage. This was her plane now, or part of it. She was determined to make it a beacon of fairness and excellence. Tanya Wu stood nearby, scanning some documents. "We've got lawyers finalizing details about the crew's contracts," she said. "Rossi wants top-tier pilots and cabin staff. He's even offering better wages than many large carriers. This is going to be an industry disruptor if we do it right." Marcia nodded. The ambitious plan was to run premium flights on high-traffic routes like New York to Los Angeles, focusing on exceptional service and transparent policies. No seats would be assigned based on status or looks. No staff would be allowed to discriminate. They'd implement mandatory bias and sensitivity training from the CEO down to baggage handlers. But as they moved forward, strange hiccups began occurring. Supplies they'd ordered for the refurbishments arrived incomplete or were mysteriously delayed. Paperwork for regulatory approvals got stuck in bureaucratic loops. Contractors who had initially signed on suddenly withdrew, citing unforeseen complications. It wasn't long before Tanya suspected foul play. Marcia confronted Rossi. "Do you think American Airlines is behind this? Some kind of sabotage?" Rossi shrugged, face grim. "We can't be sure, but it's not uncommon for corporate rivals to pressure suppliers. Let's just be cautious." Word had also spread that certain individuals in American Airlines middle management, like Brenda, the supervisor who refused Marcia's upgrade, were still on the payroll, hidden behind corporate reshuffling. Rumor had it that Brenda was fraternizing with a union official to block pilot transfers to Skyrise. If even half of the rumors were true, it meant the airline was quietly orchestrating a campaign to cripple Marcia's new venture. Then came the final blow, a sudden revocation of Skyrise's hangar lease at the Miami facility. With nowhere to store and refurbish the plane, the entire operation risked collapse. Technically, the revocation letter was from the hangar's private owner, but after some digging, Tanya found that the owner had big contracts with American Airlines. The threat was clear, Crossus, and you'll lose business. Marcia found herself in a whirlwind of frustration. Just as she was about to break down, an unexpected phone call arrived. The call was from someone who identified herself as Deborah Morrison, a senior FAA official in Washington, D.C. Morrison, a black woman in a high-ranking position, had followed Marcia's story with keen interest. Miss Duvall, we'd like to assist your new airline venture to the fullest extent allowed by federal regulations, Morrison said. We believe competition fosters excellence, and the FAA is committed to ensuring every airline has a fair chance to operate safely and efficiently. Marcia was skeptical at first. Government agencies were rarely so straightforward in offering help. But as Morrison explained, the FAA had discretionary powers to allocate certain underused government-owned hangar spaces to emerging carriers under specific conditions. It was all part of a broader push to diversify the aviation sector and encourage new entrants. That's incredibly generous, Miss Morrison, Marcia said, voice thick with relief. But are you sure you can do that, given the pressure from bigger airlines? Morrison chuckled. My job is to follow the law and regulations, not the whims of corporate giants. File an application, meet safety and financial requirements, and we'll do the rest. The scandal swirling around American Airlines has put the spotlight on discriminatory practices. It's in our interest to support any initiative that exemplifies fair play and innovation. Rossi and Tanya reacted with cautious optimism when Marcia relayed the news. With a new hangar space potentially secured, Skyrise could continue its refurbishment plans. The sabotage attempts from American Airlines or any of its sympathizers would have less leverage, since the government-owned facility wasn't easily influenced by private contracts. Still, time was ticking. Marcia wanted the plane operational within 6 months to capitalize on the intense public interest. Delays could kill momentum and investor confidence. She pressed forward, personally overseeing project timelines, budgeting, and staff recruitment. Her days were a blur of site visits, negotiations, media appearances, and legal consultations. Behind the scenes, the cat-and-mouse game between Skyrise and American Airlines escalated. Anonymous tips came in about under-the-table deals to bribe inspectors. Strange men in suits began showing up at the new hangar, claiming to be just checking safety protocols, but asking pointed questions about ownership. Tanya had to file multiple complaints to the authorities for harassment. Kevin Blake, the anonymous whistleblower, kept feeding Marcia crucial intel, risking his job to expose the ongoing sabotage attempts from within American Airlines. But with every obstacle, Marcia grew stronger. She tapped into her finance background and her unstoppable will, forging alliances with other minority-owned businesses in the aviation supply chain. A supportive groundswell built around her, and Rossi Skyrise became not just an airline, but a symbol of resilience and equality. 6 months from the day she signed the purchase agreement, Marcia stood on a newly laid red carpet at a government-owned hangar in Virginia, just outside of Washington, D.C. The Boeing 737, once a worn-out plane that American Airlines had been eager to offload, now gleamed with a fresh coat of paint and the bold new name, Skyrise. The livery design featured elegant lines that suggested ascent and possibility. A small crowd of journalists, aviation enthusiasts, and industry insiders gathered for the christening ceremony. Rossi was there, beaming like a proud parent. Tanya Wu looked relieved, arms crossed, a faint smile on her lips. FAA official Deborah Morrison stood near the podium, officially blessing the plane as meeting all safety standards. Marcia walked up to the microphone, her breath trembling with excitement. Welcome, everyone, to the official unveiling of Skyrise. This isn't just about a new airline. This is about rewriting the rules of an industry that has too often neglected fairness. When I was denied an upgrade, a fire was lit within me, but I soon learned that many others have faced far worse discrimination. This plane symbolizes a promise that we can and will do better. Applause erupted. Cameras clicked and flashed, capturing the triumphant moment. Marcia thanked Rossi for believing in her vision, the staff who worked tirelessly, and every supporter who refused to stay silent. She also thanked certain detractors, with just enough rhetorical flourish to let everyone know she wasn't intimidated by American Airlines' attempts to sabotage her. Skyrise's business model was bold, one class of seating, spacious, comfortable, and all-inclusive, eliminating the hierarchical structure that often fueled passenger disputes. Tickets were priced competitively, but with perks like free Wi-Fi gourmet meals and an emphasis on community building. An in-flight lounge replaced the usual first-class cabin. Every employee underwent intensive diversity and service training. The mission was to show that an airline could profit without sacrificing respect for its customers. As reporters wandered into the plane for a first look, one turned to Marcia. After all this turmoil, how does it feel to stand here today as co-owner of an airline, especially one born from the ashes of your conflict with American Airlines? Marcia smiled, her eyes shining. It feels like justice, but it also feels like just the beginning. We're not here to gloat, we're here to prove a point. We're here to run a successful, equitable airline that treats everyone like they matter, because they do. Even as Skyrise soared in public opinion, American Airlines faced a reckoning. The hush money documents Marcia revealed prompted a federal investigation. Patrick Wallace and several board members were summoned to testify before a congressional subcommittee that oversaw aviation practices. Journalists dug up even more scandals, maintenance corners cut, employee harassment cases ignored, passenger complaints systematically minimized. The stock price dipped precariously, and rumors swirled that the long-awaited merger was on the verge of collapse. In a surprising twist of karma, the same day Skyrise's maiden flight took off from New York to Los Angeles fully booked. With glowing reviews from passengers, news broke that the foreign airline partner had withdrawn from merger talks with American Airlines. Citing reputational risks and ongoing litigation, the prospective partner decided to invest elsewhere. American Airlines' dream of expanding its global footprint was crushed, at least for the foreseeable future. Brenda, the supervisor, who had originally refused Marcia the upgrade, became a scapegoat for the entire scandal. She was fired publicly, and although she tried to sue American Airlines for wrongful termination, her case had little support. She found herself blacklisted from most customer service roles, her name synonymous with the gate agent who triggered a corporation's downfall. Meanwhile, Kevin Blake, the whistleblower, managed to navigate out of American Airlines with the help of Tanya's legal connections. He accepted a job at a tech startup and remained a silent hero in the story. He never sought credit, but his conscience was clear, knowing that his actions had helped shine a light on deep-rooted corruption. As for Patrick Wallace, the once influential CEO, he resigned amid shareholder pressure, Departing the helm, he left behind a broken brand and a legacy of controversy. Reports hinted at a massive severance package, but the public backlash tarnished his reputation. He faded from the aviation scene, a cautionary tale of arrogance and complacency. With American Airlines scrambling to rehabilitate its image and Skyrise relishing an almost cult-like popularity, Marcia was busier than ever. She juggled her original finance role with co-managing an upstart airline that kept exceeding expectations. Rossi encouraged her to take on more public engagements to continue shaping Skyrise's ethos. She found new purpose in the challenge. Within a year, Skyrise expanded its fleet to include 2 more refurbished planes, each one purchased from carriers eager to offload older aircraft. Profits, while modest, were reinvested into staff development and philanthropic initiatives promoting diversity in aviation careers. Marcia insisted on scholarships for aspiring pilots from underrepresented communities, determined to open doors that had once been closed to her. She occasionally reflected on the day she was refused that seat upgrade, how it had ignited a life-altering chain of events. What started as a moment of discrimination had blossomed into a transformative enterprise that challenged an entire industry. While she recognized it as an extraordinary stroke of fate, she also knew that real change required countless acts of courage from ordinary people, from whistleblowers like Kevin to supportive officials like Deborah Morrison. Through it all, Marcia maintained her sense of humility and her sharp understanding that power must be wielded responsibly. She hadn't just bought a plane, she had bought the chance to model a different way of doing business, proving that success and ethics could coexist. Discrimination might spark outrage, but it can also ignite revolutions. In Marcia's story, a single, humiliating denial at the upgrade desk escalated into a cataclysm that forced an entire airline to confront its hidden wrongs and a whole industry to re-examine its practices. From the ashes of deceit and sabotage, Skyrise rose as a testament to fairness, respect, and purposeful innovation. And with every successful flight, Marcia showed the world that bold resolve and integrity could outshine even the longest shadows of corporate power. If this extraordinary saga moved you, or reminded you how far we can go when we stand firm against injustice, help us keep the conversation alive. Like this video to amplify the message, share it with those who need the inspiration, and subscribe to our channel for more stories of triumph against all odds. Your support fuels the next chapter of these life-changing journeys, because sometimes claiming your seat means buying the whole plane.